All right, we are back again. It's another episode of Raising Up Sons, where, as always, we are trying to be better dads so our sons can be better men. So you're here with LG and Big T. How's it going, Big T?
Good, man. It's been a good week so far. It's finally summertime.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, one of the things about Colorado, though, is it's like it always takes a minute for the warmness to catch up to where you guys are. We haven't even been to the pool yet because it hasn't been hot enough.
That makes me sad. I was at the pool this weekend. It was great. It's like 82 degrees, beautiful sunshiny days in Indiana. I'm thrilled that summer is here. Thrilled.
Oh yeah, same.
You know what else is going on right now is the NBA playoffs, where my Indiana Pacers they're in it, man. They're in the finals. They're there. They're competing. Who are you rooting for? You got the Pacers and the Thunder. Do you care at all in Colorado? I mean, you guys, the Nuggets aren't in it. I don't know if you care at all.
See,
Are you watching any of it?
Most people in Colorado don't care. I do love the Nuggets, but also, moved here from Indiana, so got to root for the Pacers.
Yes, sirs.
So I don't know, though. So game 2 just happened the other night, it didn't look good.
It didn't. The Pacers were able to stun the world and steal game 1. Game 2 did not go as well. But now we get to go home. And so I'm hoping, back in our own home court in Indiana, safe in Cambridge, that hopefully they can pull ahead a little bit and get a couple wins. So that is the goal. Much better at home.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is kind of leads us right into what we're talking about today. We're talking about home versus away games.
What a segue that was.
What
the Pacers home versus our home. Genius.
Genius. But yeah, so when we talk about home versus away games, we're talking about like when you and your kids are hosting friends at your house, the home game, versus when you're sending your kids to someone else's house, which is that's the away game. And even it could be someone else's house. It could be, going to practice. It could be school. It's really anywhere outside of your home base where you guys kind of control the world a little bit more. And it can be scary. And so, yeah, I'm sure growing up, we've all had experiences of being either hosting friends at your house or, being at their house. And what was your home like the place people hung out, or did you guys go to another friend's house? Like, what was the setup?
Yeah, I did have a lot of friends coming over to my house. It was also, there were like 2 or 3 houses that we hung out at. So it was like my house, Kenny's house. We had a guy, Josh Fruoff's house. All houses. My house, I feel like, always had my mom watching though.
Because you had a good mom.
That's right. So like there was this one time when I remember it was my freshman year birthday party, and we were in the driveway. We were playing basketball, and like every 5 minutes or so, we'd go hide behind my buddy's truck. My mom called me and she's like, "Taylor, what are you doing behind that truck every 5 minutes?" And I was like, "Nothing." Turns out she was right, and we had alcohol back there.
Oh, geez.
So,
anyone that knows Taylor knows that he should have never tried to hide behind a truck unless it was like a semi, because he's too big. You're way too big, man. You can't be hiding.
I know. Plus, it was like a little truck. It was like a little Tacoma or something like that. So
yeah, moms don't miss anything. We thought, back in the day, you thought you were sneaky, like you could get away with anything, and mom and dad would never know. Turns out it was super obvious, and they always know. They always know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just found out recently that, we have this big fire pit in our backyard, and we'd all be sitting back there around the fire pit talking. My dad was like, "Yeah, I just leave our window open and we could hear everything you guys were talking about in school."
Oh my God. Even back then, they didn't have to read the text messages. You just open the window. He knew what you guys were talking about right there. Yeah, man. I remember growing up, my parents divorced, and so, went back and forth between the houses. And at either house, it always seemed to be like the hub where people like to hang out. At my mom's house, we had a pool, which was awesome. And so my friends were over there constantly eating all of our food and living in that backyard, swimming in the pool. And then my dad's house was, he had a basement, and that was sort of the hangout spot where all my friends would come over and watch games or play video games or just sit and be. So it was always sort of the place to be at. So we loved being the host family and having people around. And back then, it was just fun. I think it was really more intentional that my parents wanted to create, the sort of house that, where my friends would be there rather than being over at their places all the time. And I get it. That's, kind of what we're talking about today. I said I do want to create, a space where my kids want to have their friends over and, kind of be here where we have eyes on it and a little more control. But there's going to come a day, and there'll be times where they're going to go to their friends' houses, and you have little to no control, right?
For sure. And so the reason that all this matters is because you want to be able to be the influence, not just on your son, but you want to be the influence on like the whole crew. This helps you figure out, all right, who are the kids that I want my sons hanging out with?
Mm.
Who are the ones that are like, all right, I want my son to spend as much time as possible with him? Who are the ones that you're like, you know what, maybe this is just going to be like a school friend, or or something like that. Um, but yeah, I think getting to know your son's friends is super important, and I think when that happens, it's like, well, you were just telling me. Tell us about how your dad Pappy got his name.
Yeah, man. So my dad, his name's Gary, actually, but he's universally known as Pappy. And the reason why is because, like I said, my friends, in middle school, high school, like even into college, like they just always hung out in my dad's basement and were around. And so my good friend Luke Robinson, he was over there hanging out in the basement, and he was just joking. He was like, I've already got a dad, but your dad's sort of like my Pappy, I guess. And so because he was always talking to him and hanging out. And he just joked that like my dad half raised him, which isn't true. He's got great parents, but he was just at our house all the time. And so he started calling him Pappy, and it just spread that all my friends then were like, yeah, Pappy. And it's just kind of stuck. That was, I mean, we're talking 20 years ago. And now he's primarily known as Pappy to most people in his life. I mean, including my boys. They don't call him Papaw or Grandpa. They call him Pappy. It's
Oh, that's awesome.
All because of my buddy that started that nickname. So
That's awesome. Yeah, like I can think of examples too when I'm growing up. Going to my friend's dad, Bob Becker. Asking him for advice. My friends coming to my dad for advice. He doesn't have a cool name like Pappy though. But I think that is that is like one of the goals, I think, for being a father. It's like you don't want to just influence your own son. You want to influence as many boys as you can and help them grow into the man that God has designed them to be. And
for
so
sure,
I
man.
think
And that's
that
the
is
role. I
awesome.
mean, because there's some, maybe some of you guys out there listening, and I know for sure, friends of mine at church, and they don't have kids of their own. But man, they are having an influence on so many kids, either through coaching, through teaching, through
Hmm.
being a volunteer in student ministry. Those are all roles where they're getting to invest in and pour into young people and have that kind of influence. And it's man, it's such a difference.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so one of the verses that I like when it comes to backing this up is Proverbs 13. It says, "Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm." And so
Mm.
I think, obviously when the boys are at a young age, we can help control the environment. We can help them figure out, all right, these are the type of people that you want to hang out with. These are the types of people that you want to grow a deep friendship with.
Mm.
And the home can be a training ground for that. It's a place where your kids gain courage. It's where they figure out, all right, this is wisdom, all these things.
Yeah, man, and I love what you said there because I mean that's what we talk about all these statistics and sayings and stuff, and it's true. I mean, you walk with the wise, you become wise. The companion of fools suffers harm. I think I forget who said it, but most people you're about the average of your five closest friends, and so
Yep.
if you believe that's true, then you better be really intentional about who your kids' closest friends are because I mean, like the old saying, you show me your friends, I'll show you your future. Like that's who you're going to become. You'll
Hmm.
become more and more like them, and it has an effect on you. And you see it all the time. My wife, she always jokes, she can tell when we've been hanging out. She says, you start talking like Taylor. Like you're just shouting stuff out. We were on a road trip recently and just reading road signs going down the road. And she's like, yeah, I can tell. Like you've been talking to Big T for a lot because you spend time with people and around them. And all of a sudden, like you start to talk similarly. You start to think similarly. Like those influences come so quickly. And so, yeah, you become wise with the wisdom around you. So it's super important. I also love the verse in Romans 12, as we talk about this and creating homes that people want to be in and your friends want to hang out at. Romans 12:13 tells us to practice hospitality. And it seems like a simple thing, and you just kind of glance over as you read the New Testament, but it's in there over and over and over again. It talks about it in Romans, talks about it in Hebrews, like again and again. It says, as Christians, like as followers of Jesus, we should practice hospitality of
Hmm.
creating environments where people feel cared about and welcomed and comfortable. Like that's a biblical practice. It's a discipline that we need to be good at.
Yep. And then one of the things too was, well, also let's just go back to when you were talking about hanging out with me too much and yelling out road signs. People think I sound like an idiot now. The other day we were talking with her name is Brittany Young. She's the one that was helping us with this podcast, getting us started and things
Brittany's
like that.
the best.
And she's like, yeah, LG, you can talk about books you've read, and Taylor, you can talk about something. I'm like, what do these people think I am?
Taylor can also read. He does great.
I do read. I read good. The other verse that you and I were talking about was Matthew 9:10. We're talking about Jesus eating with tax collectors and sinners, hanging out with them. What's your thought on that verse? Because I think there's different there's different views on this, because it's like, yes, if our kids are Christians, it's like, yes, we are raising great sons. Do we want to, be like, hey, you can go hang out with whoever you want and you're going to be the good influence? Do we still want to try and protect that? What are you thinking about that, LG?
Yeah, man, I think it's a balance. Like, we have talked about this before, of like when you want to use your kids, or not use them, but you want to give them opportunities to be used by God, and to be an influence on their friends and in their schools and on their teams. Like, those are all great things. And so, like, I've talked to people that are weighing out, like, whether they want to homeschool or public school with their kids, because they're like, I want to create an environment where they're being nurtured and fed biblical, like, mature things and taught in a Christian way, and that's super, super important. But they're like, hey, I want them to have an influence. And if we take all of our kids out of public schools, like, there's no Christian influence in those schools. And I think both of those things are true. And so you have to weigh that out as a parent, because you look at this verse and it's like, Jesus ate with tax collectors and sinners. He was in the mix with them. He was, pouring into them. But my kids are not Jesus, right? My kids are, not ready for every and any environment. Some, sure. Some they can have, they can walk into that and they can be an influence. They can handle some temptations or certain environments. But you have to know where to draw those lines and when to protect them and when it's too much. I don't want my kids to live on the mission field all the time right now, because they're not necessarily ready for that. And so it's kind of growing them in that maturity, and seeing when they're ready to go into, whether it's public school or, a friend's house or whatever that may be. But it's kind of weighing that out. It's different with every kid, right?
Oh, that's true. Yeah. And I think, what they're doing is, we got to look at that as a battlefield. And in order to go into battle, you have to have proper training. And so I think when there's at a young age, like our kids are, man, the training is still in, we're still in like the middle of the training right now. And
For
so
sure.
we don't want to try and skip out or send them off, too soon. But also it's like, it's one of those things where we also have to have trust in Jesus, that it doesn't all rely on us. And we don't want to, like, quench the work of the Holy Spirit and what he's doing. And so it's such a hard balance and fine line. So it's like, we don't want to hold them back, but we also don't want to, push them too forward. And so,
no, but like you're saying, it's in those training gears that, like, it's like anything else. Like, you're not going to go into a game before you practice. And even, we talk about, we practice how we act at a restaurant, because when we go there, we want to be ready for it, prepared. And so, we talk about those things. And I think that's true even when it comes to this stuff of, like, I want to talk to my kids about, how to respond to environments and what you do if this happens. And to do some practicing, some training, so that as they grow up and get older and they have more freedom and they're sent out, that they're ready for it and they can succeed in that. And so, that's kind of what we're talking about today.
Let's look at some of these stats I thought were pretty interesting. I think you already hit one, but just talking about the 5 people. So this one, 70% of teens say peer pressure happens most often at a friend's house. Would you say that was true for you growing up?
Oh, at least that much. And so for sure true when I was growing up. What's even more so now is, like, the peer pressure they feel, not just at their friend's house, but like when they're online or on social media, and how much, influence and pressure comes from that. I think there's a whole different thing we can get into there as we talk about it, but that peer pressure definitely happens most often from their friends, whether at their house or, wherever they engage with them.
Oh yeah, that's tough. And that's why, just making sure, if your kid's old enough to have a phone, making sure it's like, all right, we're doing whatever we can to make sure that we can protect our kid on the phone. And
I don't know if I'm old enough to have a phone sometimes.
No,
I'm like,
there is no privacy. We get to see everything. So, The other one in 5 students encounter alcohol, porn, or drugs at a friend's home by 8th grade. What do you think? You think that's true?
I mean, I bet that's pretty close. I know for me, first exposure to porn was before the 8th grade. It was back in early middle school, like probably, I don't know, 4th, 5th grade, something like that.
Same.
And then alcohol, not until I got into high school. So it's a little bit different with those things. But I would say on average, yeah, I mean, that's probably right on par. I mean, by 8th grade, you've encountered or you've been close to some of those things at least.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, my first time, like, we're talking about home versus away games. Like, I think my parents were, super intentional, all that stuff. But the first time that I encountered porn I was in 6th grade, and it was at a sleepover at my own house with friends that, brought some stuff over. So,
yeah. Well, it's, I think I said this on a previous episode too. I don't want to repeat myself too much, but like, nobody smokes their first cigarette alone.
yeah.
Nobody takes their first drink alone. Nobody looks at their first pornographic image alone. Like those things usually happen because of someone else's influence, because of a friend or somebody that you're around. So yeah, man, it's out there.
All right, this one I thought was interesting. When a positive adult male is present in a teen's life, even just occasionally, risky behaviors drop by 40 to 60%.
Oh man, that's I think it's in the book Anxious Generation. They talk about this, that the number one predictor of future incarceration, so if someone getting arrested or going to prison, the number one predictor of that is whether or not an adult male was present in their life growing up. So fatherless homes, I mean, risky behaviors for sure, it goes way up. So I mean, I would say that tracks with everything else that we're seeing.
Yeah, and so all this stuff, this just backs it up. Boys with positive male role models are 2 times more likely to avoid risky behavior. When dads are involved, even casually, teen mental health, school performance, and social choices improve. And so, yeah, this is saying you don't have to be perfect. You just got to be present. You just got to be there with encouragement. You got to be there, just willing to step in and help and speak up and just be intentional, not just with your son, but with your son's friends.
Yeah.
So
you showing up and caring about your kids, man, it does so much, and it covers a multitude of sins. Like you said, you don't have to be perfect. We're not going to get all of this right. And if you've made it this far into this podcast, you know that we don't either. We are a perfect example of the average dad that just has good intentions and is trying to figure this out. But I do think when you show up and you show that intentionality and just caring about them, it does cover a lot of those mistakes and mishaps that happen along the way.
Definitely. And it's like like when you're growing up, the dads that you are around, the dads that you can think of, it's like, man, I can go to this dad for this, I can go to this dad for this, whatever it is. Yeah, we're just trying to do that for our own sons and their friends. So
yeah. So I got to ask you, you shared one already about growing up, like being at friends' houses, and well, that was actually at your house. Are there any like when you've been at a friend's house, like any like I don't know, embarrassing moments or learning moments, or just you guys got in trouble, did something stupid? Like, you remember any of those growing up?
Oh yeah, I think I was pretty. I think somehow I escaped most of the trouble because I think growing up I was around it, but the moment that something came out that shouldn't have been, whether it was like alcohol or drugs or whatever it was, I'm like, all right, see ya. And it wasn't because and it wasn't out of I'm a Christian, I'm gonna do this. It was out of fear that my mom would kill me.
Hey, and fear of God is the beginning of wisdom,
Yeah.
Maybe fear of mom works the same way.
It's true. But there was always that house, like the Becker house. It's like I could always go over there and it's like, we're gonna watch rated R movies, we're gonna do whatever we wanted.
No offense to the Becker house if you're listening out there.
That's right, it was the best house.
Yeah, man. Similarly, I mean, not until I got in enough trouble in high school, but prior to that, not too much. I can remember in middle school being at a friend's house, and I think it was at my friend Matt's house, and his family, they were having salmon for dinner, which I love salmon now. It's one of my favorite things to cook on the grill, and we do it pretty often. But middle school me had not eaten a lot of salmon, and so they make this wonderful meal and set it out. and I didn't know that you're not supposed to eat the skin on the salmon. And so we're just having dinner and eating, and all of a sudden Matt looks over and goes, "Dude, what'd you do with the skin? Did you eat that?" And I was like, yeah." I didn't want to be rude, I didn't want to offend them, so I just ate the skin and all, and yeah, it was gross.
And I'm sure Matt's parents loved you more because of it. And
Probably.
that same thing actually happened to me, only it was me and Allison were eating dinner over at our friends Aubrey and Ryan's house. And I was in my 30s and I ate the skin because I didn't know you weren't supposed to. But hey, I didn't notice and it was delicious.
Yeah, you put enough salt on something, it all tastes good. But
that's right,
yeah,
man.
But I do love you talked about like just whether it's out of fear or whatever it is, but for our kids to grow up and have that like, I don't want to be around this. This isn't good. I'm not comfortable with this. And just having the gumption to like, or the bravery, you could be afraid of the consequences, but the bravery to like say no to your friends or walk out of a situation, that's huge. And that's kind of the goal of what I want to instill in my boys is like for you to be brave enough to choose your own path, brave enough to know that this isn't good for you and to walk away from it. And so hoping and praying that we can teach them and show them enough that they're able to do those same things that you were able to do when you were a kid, man. That's awesome.
For sure. And I think this is something, home versus away games, like we want to have as many home games as possible. And this is something that, it doesn't matter if you live in a tiny home or you live in a mansion, whatever it is, it's all about like creating the culture. It's all about, setting up that winning environment and just figuring out, all right, when in the schedule works to do this. So we just had a party. My oldest son, it was the end of the school year. And so he invited, 10 to 15, I think they're like 15, or soon to be eighth graders, over at the house. And all it was we just, got a basketball hoop. We got a bunch of cookies and Mountain Dew, Baja Blast, all these things, whatever they wanted. It's like we're getting all the snacks possible. And we're inviting everybody over here and just letting them have fun and just giving them some freedom, but also, showing up every now and then. Just like, hey, you guys want some more snacks? Let me see what's going on in here.
100%, man. Listen, we think so much, the adults, about what our house is like, and we have enough room for this, and space for people to sit and all that stuff. Teenagers could care, kids even younger than that, like could care less. Like they're not worried about how nice your couch is. In fact, it's probably not going to be very nice after they get a hold of it. So I wouldn't worry about that stuff. It's just creating an environment where they feel comfortable, and that's I remember growing up, that's what we cared about was like whether or not their parents were just nice to us and talked to us, and if they had good food. That was you got Little Debbie's in the pantry. It's a good house.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
all it would take.
Yeah, definitely. And I think too, it's just like being intentional. It's one of those things where it's like you don't want to hover when all your when all your kids' friends are over there. You want to drop in whenever you can, but not too much. It's a balancing act, and make sure. I think what I always try and do. I don't know if it's working or not, but it's like when they're coming in the house, I'm standing there at the door. I'm welcoming them in. I'm, trying to give, some positive energy, smiling, all these things. Then when they leave, I'm doing the same thing. If parents come to the door, it's a great opportunity to see what their parents are like, all this stuff.
Yeah, man. Learning their names, like getting to know who they are, that stuff's all so important. And it helps create that environment because you said it, like, you do want to be, the one that gets to host a lot because you do have more eyes on what's going on and can control it. And it's not to say that like you don't trust anyone else out there. Like for sure there's trusted families and there's, places I want to send them where they'll be influenced in positive ways. That's there for sure. But we want to create a space where that can happen, not just for our boys, but also for their friends that, especially as they get older, like your kids now in middle school going into eighth grade. You don't know what type of family or what type of environment every single one of those kids is coming from. But you can create a positive one at your house where they do get to encounter, Christian values. They get to encounter truth. They get to see the gospel lived out. They get to see a healthy marriage modeled for them. Like all those things are good, especially, not just for our kids, but for the other kids that are walking into that. So I think you guys have always done a really good job at that.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. But the other thing to keep in mind too is what happens when it's an away game. What happens when it's not at your house, and something comes up? What what's going to happen here? How can we help our kids be ready for that?
Yeah, man. I think Scripture talks about that God will never give you a temptation more than you can withstand, and He'll always provide a way out of it, right? And so for our kids, I think we are the way provided out of it. As the parent, you want to have the type of relationship where they can trust you enough to come to you, trust you enough to call you, trust you enough to tell you about it, like even
Hmm.
after it happens.
Yeah, even after they make a mistake.
Right. And so I think, for parents, it's like when like your kids do come to you with something, I think, and we talk about this in student ministry too, but like you've got to have a great poker face.
Uh
And
huh.
so when they share something about what happened, or what someone like, if someone brought out pornography or somebody said something or they watched this movie, whatever it was, it's like you don't want to have an overreacted face. And so it's keeping your facial expressions calm, letting them share stuff. And then, you respond to it after the fact, right? If like, okay, what'd you think about that? Was that a good decision? Um, you know, how did you get out of that? Or, what do we do differently next time? But I think building that trust where they can come to you and know this is like, dad's not going to kill me, over what happened, or he's not going to yell at me or, you know, call their parents immediately or anything like that. But I think that's important, creating the type of relationship where they feel good about coming to you with anything.
Oh yeah, yeah,
What
that's
else?
perfect. And I think too is making sure that they're aware of that even beforehand. And so it's like leading up to those moments. It's always in your free time when you're talking, be like, hey, here's some questions I have for you. And so you can talk with them about their friends, ask them about what's going to happen at this hangout, and just
Hmm.
letting them know like when you're driving them over there, hey, if this happens, I want you to tell me about it. I'm not going to be pissed. I'm not going to I'm not going to destroy you. I
Yeah.
want to know cuz I love you and I want to help you. But if you do make a decision, to partake in something, it's like there will be consequences, but I'm still going to help you. I'm still going to
Right.
love you. I'm still going to be there for you
Right, it doesn't
no
change
matter
the
what.
love, no matter.
Right.
Yeah, we tell our boys all the time, no matter what good things you do, no matter what bad
Yeah.
things you do, Dad always
Yeah.
loves you, and Jesus loves you that way too.
Yeah.
And it's
So one
important.
of
Go ahead.
I was gonna say one of the just like tangible things that we've done with my kids is it's like, all right, we've dropped them off at a house that we didn't know who the parents were. They stayed for like an hour or so. And we've given them a phone. And it's like, all right, if they got a weird older brother, a weird, parent or something like that, it's
Right.
like, hey, we're gonna be back here in 2 hours. But if you need us to pick you up prior to that, send me this, smiley face emoji, or whatever it is. So that way it's like they're not the ones that are saying, hey, get me out of here. It's like
Right.
we're coming and we're saying, hey, I got to pick up my kid early for some reason. So
Yeah,
just
man.
just having escape plans like that.
And okay, and your boys, we're already like we're game planning. So our boys are
Yeah.
they're still young, and so at this age, hopefully, no one's going to show them any pornographic images or anything like that. But I do know inevitably, like as they get older into like those middle school, like what was the stat read earlier, usually by eighth
Mm,
grade, right? Like at some point, that stuff is going to be in front of them, and they have to decide what to do with it. And so, how have you talked about this with your boys? Like, how have you trained them of like, so not if this happens, but when it happens? Like
oh
it's
yeah.
going to happen inevitably. Like, what do you do when someone or you come across something like that?
Yeah. So I'm constantly asking them, like anytime they hang out with a friend, whenever we got free time, I'm constantly asking them, about sports. I'm constantly asking them about friends, about girls. What are they worried about this week? What's keeping them up at night? All these things. And I always ask them, hey, have you has anybody shown you porn? Have you seen a picture or a video, of a naked girl yet or whatever? And I tell them all the time, I'm constantly telling them, hey, it's not like this is gonna happen. Like you are gonna see this at some point. And so when you do, what is your response to that?
Hmm.
And so they know it's like, hey, we're gonna, turn the phone off or whatever it is, we're gonna walk away, then they're gonna come and they're gonna immediately tell me. And then I'm gonna
Hmm.
help them with next steps or whatever that is. And they know if it's at school, they're gonna walk away and they're gonna go tell the teacher immediately.
Right.
So
That's what
and
we
they
talk
know,
about is
yeah,
like teaching them that like, man, when something like that pops up, you find the first trusted adult you can get to and you tell
yep,
them, and then you come tell me as soon as you can.
yep,
And that's like your primary, like that's your escape hatch right there. When this happens, here's what
yeah,
you do, and this is how you handle it. I think it's good. And it's not just that. I mean, there's other things too they're going to encounter.
oh
Um,
yeah,
this age, it's more like the TV shows they're going to be watching, or uh, you know, all that stuff that pops up. And so it's, learning how to respond to it and how to escape. And we tell, talk to our boys too, like it's not always about like having to expose the fact that you didn't want to be about it. So, with friends that are raising kids a little bit older, similar to you, it's like sometimes they tell their kids, like, you can call me to come get you. And I'm not even going to like blow your cover that this is why you're leaving or how to get out of there. I'll just help you, get out of that environment as soon as you can. So
yeah,
it's good.
So I think having an escape plan, making sure that the boys know, hey, I can go to dad with anything. He's not going to freak out on me or whatever it is. But also, what there's also positive things too. And so when we see kids that our boys are hanging out with, and and we like them, how do we help them hang out with them more? Because I know like there's some boys that Eli and Jack are hanging out with, and I'm constantly saying, hey, I like how this one like I'll tell Eli, hey, I like how your friend included Jack in on these things.
Yeah.
He seems like a great guy. What do you think about him? Just complimenting their friends. So what about you? Do your kids have friends yet that you're like, all right, I want my boys to grow up and be best friends with this family?
For sure. We've already picked out his future wife, so we're trying to hang out as much as possible with their family. No, I mean, especially at this age early on, a lot of their interactions are because we're friends with that family. Because most of the time, the people that they're hanging out with, it's friends of ours already. And so, we've already been able to capitalize on those relationships. But what we're hoping is like down the road, like when they become friends with someone and we love that friendship and it's healthy and it's like, we're getting good stuff out of that and we can celebrate those things. It's like, well, I want to get to know them and, spend time with their parents and become friends so that we can do that, invite them over for a cookout, make a bonfire, like, have dinner together. And you create times for them to spend more time together and do things. And so I think a lot of that can happen naturally just over, shared interests, things that our kids are doing, and kind of build off those things. And it does really create like this whole mission field of like, when your kids start playing sports and, you navigating all that stuff. But you're going to be around all these different families. And so it's all relational and being able to build those relationships. And so, yeah, I think that's one of the ways you can capitalize and encourage that.
Oh yeah. So it's been awesome. Even with my oldest son, it's like some friends from school, they've been coming around the house. They're now attending church. They're serving in kids ministry, with Eli. They went to the church camp, all these things. And so it's an awesome thing. And I just spend a lot of nights praying for my boys and friendships. I'm like, God, I like this guy. Please help my son be friends with, or somebody like him. It's like, man, I'm like worrying about this more than I probably should, but it's also
that's why we're talking about it, right? I mean, this is one of the biggest areas of influence. I mean, we know how much friendships and relationships have influenced who we are and who we become, and I mean, it changes our lives in such a big way. And so it is important. Like we joked about picking out his future wife, but like we pray about those things, and we pray about their friendships and who they're spending time with because it matters that much. And so as we kind of get here towards the end of this today, what would you encourage our dads that are out there listening? Like, what's the takeaway from this conversation?
Man, I think there's two takeaways for me. One is encourage your kids, to have friends over at the house that you can be intentional with. And for one of them, just like go all out. Like make sure they've got something fun to play when they come over, fun movie to watch, whatever it is. It can be exciting or not exciting. But just as long as they got to hang out, they got some drinks and some food. And I think too, like the next one would be if you don't have a friend that like you can talk about this with, or maybe your son doesn't have, friends yet. This is like an opportunity for you and your son to figure out, all right, how do we make friends? We're gonna start inviting people over to the house. We're gonna have bonfires, like you said, pizza, cookouts, whatever it is. It's like because community is so important and influence is so important. And yeah, so that's what I got. What about you?
Yeah, man, I think you hit it. Find some other dads to do this with. We say it, I feel like every episode, but I think it's so important that like don't do this just you by yourself. Find some other dudes, some other dads, some other families that are kind of have the same values, the same goals, and do this together and invite them into it. So I think that's the number one thing. And yeah, create those hangout spaces and let your kids see it. Like let them see you having friendships and have an influence, like in other people influencing your lives, like you want to model that for them. And last thing is just, I mean, you already kind of talked about it, but talk to your boys about this. Like, it doesn't have to be a secret that you're navigating and trying to work on positive relationships for them. Tell them why friends are so important. Tell them, why that influence matters and what effect it has on them, what effect it's had on you, and let them be a part of it. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's awesome. I think, in all honesty, like one thing to think about when closing this out is just like, you might be the only positive influence, like influential parent that your son's friends ever see. And so just make sure it's like, man, we have a purpose. We can be sharing Jesus. We can be a positive influence with our, even with our son's friends, no matter what. So,
Yeah.
yeah, home
Yeah,
field
y'all.
advantage, home court. That's what we want.
That's right. So, hey, hit us up in the comments. Let us know, how you're creating a good home environment and how you're preparing them to go on the road and other places.
So, all right, man. Keep being big daddies out there. Follow us at Raising Up Sons. Listen, subscribe, do whatever it takes. See you next week.